I wanted to talk to you today as hopefully a beginner, how you can set up your audio levels, discuss a little bit about your initial gain settings, how to set that, then compression, what it does and how to work with it, involving a limiter so that you don't peak your audio as much, and then look at noise suppression, a noise gate, or the signal to noise relationship that you can modify just by adjusting your gain. I'm speaking to you today through an Electro Voice RA20. It's a broadcast microphone from the 70s. It has a nice tonal quality, and I like the way it sounds. It has some other things that we'll go into later. But my voice sounds good to you, one, because it's at a healthy volume, something easy to hear, but there's also a decent amount of processing going on right now. I have on my desk a channel strip, an analog channel strip, which allows me to process my vocals live. Because it's analog, it gives it a certain quality as well, but I can bypass that with this switch. And now you're hearing me through my desktop interface. It's a Volt 176, and I like that interface. It has a 76 compressor, and that gives a little bit of warmth, a small amount of compression as well. So now I will turn that off as well, and now my voice should be perceivably quieter. So I'm actually going to turn up the gain a decent amount, and you'll probably notice that the air conditioner in the background has gotten a little bit louder, and we will talk about that relationship in a little bit here. So if I were going to use OBS, and it's what we'll mess with right now. So I can monitor my audio levels here for my microphone, and you want to be in this healthy yellow range. It's okay to go a little bit out into the red when you get a little bit louder, and it's okay to be a little bit down into the green like I am here when I move a little bit farther from the microphone. But generally you want to speak into the yellow, sit somewhere in the yellow. That's the vocal range. Now that can be challenging when you get louder, because it's very easy to completely clip your levels. So we'll look at how to manage that. But before we do all that, I need you to set up your headphones or your speakers so that you know what you're listening to. Obviously, the meter is a visual indicator, and that's very helpful. But maybe you've set your volume before and your gain just off of how it sounds, and we want to get that in a range that doesn't confuse you. So what I recommend is find a movie trailer, a movie producer, basically, on YouTube, and play that at full volume on your player here, your web player, and then adjust your computer volume to where the peak volume in that is a little bit loud, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, and that should be kind of a standard listening range. So we'll just play this briefly.
Hello?
Hey, it's Marty Mauser. I'm in the Royal Suite. I saw you in the lobby yesterday.
Okay.
Well,
So you can see as that plays, obviously it's a trailer, it's a compressed format, so everything's gonna be a little bit louder to grab your attention, but you're kind of sitting in the -20 to -10 range on your desktop audio. You really probably don't want that in the red for what you're listening to. So now you have something to reference for yourself. Now we have something to reference with. Let's go through our setup for our microphone. So I have removed the processing that happens live on my desk here, and now we're going to add some of those features back in through OBS. So going to our filters on our mic/aux inputs, I've gone ahead and selected a few here. I think it's good to have a limiter. A limiter is essentially going to help stop the peak audio before it actually clips, which is at 0. I set that to maybe -3. You basically just don't want this too low. If I set this to something below my voice, I will simply just be getting cut off and quieter. But having that at -3 gives me a little bit of range to push into peak sound and not clip as easily. Though when I talk very, very, very loudly, it's still distorted. Having that limiter prevents our audio signal down the way from creating issues. Let's say we upload our OBS recording to YouTube. If it's clipping, YouTube will have to lower the gain of your audio, and that will make your quiet parts of the video much quieter. So a limiter is very good to have. I set mine at maybe -3, a release time of 60 milliseconds. If your release time is maybe too fast, it'll technically catch more, but it may not sound as natural. There's a degree of very, very short transient sounds, they like to say, that you do want to actually hear it. It's not loud, but it adds a certain quality to the sound. So our limiter, very important, very easy to have. Next, we'll look at a compressor. There are some very standard settings. I say standard. There's some good initial settings. You can even just Google these. A ratio of 4:1 achieves a peak reduction of 5 to 10 decibels on your loudest peak sounds. If you have a fast attack of around 1 to 20 milliseconds to control your transients, and a medium fast release of around 20 to 50 for unnatural sound. So let's turn that on now. So what the compressor is doing here is going to take the peak signals from your audio waveform, and it's going to reduce it. It's not a flat reduction, but you can set up how it actually treats the sound. And a compressor can apply to any sound source, so that's why there's so much variability with these sliders. But for the human voice range, you're essentially looking somewhere in this ratio. You can easily find other sources that will recommend different things. Feel free to try them out, see how they sound. You will probably be setting your ratio somewhere around 7. Your threshold is going to essentially affect when it kicks in and how it affects your amplitude. If you have a lot of reduction potentially to your peaks, then you're going to be wanting to increase your makeup gain. But what happens is you've compressed the top of your waveform, and you've also now made up gain with your output gain, and you've actually increased your noise floor. So the air conditioner that's running behind me has actually gotten louder. If I can give you an example, you are actually raising your noise floor. So I will set this back in this kind of range, something like this, kind of looking at my levels, making sure I'm speaking into the yellow at a comfortable distance here. The compressor helps bring up, in effect, your lower signals by reducing your peak. So it lets you shift everything up because you make up for your reduction. That's why the output gain is so important. But adding a compressor, while it reduces your peaks and it kind of gives you more room to speak potentially, it actually increases your noise floor. So we need to address that now. I would say there's three ways to do that. At least in OBS, we have noise suppression, which is like a smart feature that will analyze the background and try to remove background noise. We have a noise gate, which will just say any signal below this level, don't even transmit it. And that's completely fine. And then we can also mess with our input gain versus our background noise. So we can get closer to our microphones, turn down our gain, and we'll have the same vocal audio level, but we've now reduced the background noise because we've lowered our gain. I'll get into that last here. So let's look at our noise suppression. We reduce this a little bit. Our noise suppression, if we enable it, is going to cut out the background sound. And OBS has a couple options. There's the low quality, low CPU usage version, which you can set a slider for. And then there's the higher quality, more CPU intensive version. And as I pause there, that will cut out the background noise. I will turn that off, and now we'll look at the noise gate. The noise gate is going to let you set a slider to cut off your background noise. So we have this set to 34, which is going to be around here. I'll pause. And my background noise is quieter than 34. So it's not tripping over that threshold like my voice is, so it's not transmitting it. But if I stop talking and turn up my gain to pick up more of the background noise, now you can actually hear that background noise. So just like, my computer, I plug in my webcam and it changes my microphone to my webcam, it's farther from my source of my voice, so it's mixing more with the background. The actual signal of my voice is not as different as the background. But when I get close to the source, when I get close to the microphone, and I adjust the gain to accommodate for that, you have a better signal to noise ratio. So you can have a noise gate, which is just a threshold that you can set up. These default settings are probably completely fine for you. So we'll turn off our settings here, and we are going to go back to what I have set up to record some live vocals. I'll turn down my gain to match. I'm looking again to be speaking into the yellow here, and I will talk to you a little bit about our signal to noise ratio, our last attack basically of controlling background noise. So there are two main types of microphones that are marketed to us. You have a condenser microphone like this Maono, and you have a dynamic microphone. And a dynamic microphone produces a signal on its own, and you can work with that signal how you will. And a condenser microphone does not produce a signal on its own necessarily, does not produce electricity as a signal. You have to give it a power threshold that it then varies, and that is your signal. That's what phantom power is. So this microphone right now does not need phantom power to produce a signal. It's physically moving, physically generating an electric signal, and then I have to boost that signal into a range to for you to be able to hear it. Whereas a condenser microphone is more sensitive because it does not have to produce power. It already has power, so it just looks at the variance in that power. So when you're looking at microphones, you'll be marketed between dynamic and cardioid microphones, and they will say dynamic microphones reject background noise better than condenser microphones. That's probably not true necessarily. What I think is more of an effect is how the microphone sounds when you get very close to it. So a Shure SM7B is a broadcast microphone. It has that kind of boomy, warm sound. It is designed in such a way that when you get close to it, it magnifies the bass levels. It actually has a chamber inside of it that kind of like a guitar chamber. It resonates with a voice, and it helps to boost the warmth and the deepness of a voice. And that suits the broadcast radio sound, and people like it for that. But when I was selecting a microphone, my voice is a little bit lower, or maybe has enough bass already. I don't want to add to that because it would be way, way too much. So why would I get a microphone that already is tuned for that? So I got an RE20, and it's lovely. The way it works is the venting on the sides is supposed to compensate for the lower frequencies, for what they call the proximity effect, which as you get closer and closer to speaking to a microphone, it exponentially increases the bass frequencies, and it makes a boomy sound. The RE20 compensates for that with how it's designed, and it allows me to speak to this microphone much closer than I maybe could on a condenser microphone or a different microphone like the Shure SM7B. And I like that because I can affect my signal to noise ratio by speaking closer to my microphone and increasing my signal relative to my noise in the background. So let's do a quick demo. I will increase my gain here, and I will speak farther from my microphone. Now I am in a relatively healthy range, if I can control my voice here, and I am technically at a good volume for you to hear, but since I have increased the overall gain, I have not only raised the signal, I've also raised the noise floor. So they've, in a sense, they have leveled out more because I've lifted my overall gain. So now you hear the background noise much, much more, even though this microphone is supposed to be this great broadcast, dynamic, quiet, rejects background noise microphone. It's not the case. So we'll go back here. Now I can also do the opposite. So we'll start at my normal range, but I can turn this down more and more and more and more, and you will hear the background gets quieter and quieter, but I have to get closer and closer to my microphone. Now, being this close, the proximity effect is probably in full swing, and it's not the way I want to sound. It's probably a lot boomier than I'd like to be. I can adjust that. I can reduce the bass frequencies. There's things you can do. Luckily, I have a channel strip processor, so I can do that on a live signal. You can do that in OBS with the 3-band equalizer, which I'm just looking at now. You would probably reduce your low frequencies to compensate for that. But essentially, there is a lot of marketing buzzwords for microphones advertising dynamic microphones as being this quieter version. And I fell for it. And this was my last microphone purchase. And then I finally clued in that it really is just a signal to noise ratio. If you can get close to your source and reduce your overall gain, you will reduce your background noise. Finding a microphone that will work for you is the important part. A lavalier microphone, the little tiny ones that they hide on people for productions, may potentially have less background noise, even though it's a tiny little microphone, than a 30 millimeter diaphragm condenser microphone that's 2 feet from your face when your air conditioner's running and your kids are screaming downstairs. So don't fall for the hype. It's less about the microphone and more about how you set it up many times. So set your audio so that when you listen to things back, it doesn't confuse you. You can look at these meters. You basically want your ears to agree with the meters that you see, because it's hard to visually trust an audio signal. So that would be your first step. Then you want to set your gain so that you're speaking into a healthy yellow range. It's okay to be a little above. It's okay to be a little below. Another thing to quickly touch on is, we'll go back through the filters and kind of recap that. But if you have some background audio, so we'll play this trailer in the background as kind of a background sound, you probably want that to be,
I'm in the royal suite.
you'll play
I
with
saw you
it,
in the lobby yesterday.
but for your
Okay.
voice
Well,
to
I never talked to an actual movie star.
supersede
You know something
the
of a performer too.
background sound,
Yeah, you don't believe me?
it probably needs to be in the negative 30 to negative 40
You got the Daily Mail in
range.
front of you?
So that might be where you would put your game audio, potentially, depending on how you want to balance those things out. Now, if you also have music playing in the background, then you probably need that to be even lower than those two, because you have a budget up to just below 0, and you can't have 3 signals at negative 3 decibels, because that will add up to more than negative 3. You have to have your signals relative to different things. Let me know if you have any more questions. This is a basic overview of setting up audio in OBS, or even if you were video editing, this is how you might set up your tracks. Hopefully this helped.